They blockaded Earth without warning. No declaration, no demands. One moment the sky was familiar and crowded with satellites and stations. The next it was full of shadows. Massive shapes slid into position between Earth and the stars, eclipsing the sun in slow, deliberate passes. Every long-range transmission died within minutes. Deep space probes went silent. The world watched as the planet became a sealed room. At first, governments spoke of restraint and observation. The fleet did nothing hostile. No weapons fired. No cities threatened. That silence unsettled people more than an invasion ever could. Economies stalled. Orbital traffic froze. Crews aboard space stations sent final reports before their signals vanished. Earth was alone and everyone could feel it. I worked beneath the surface in a monitoring facility built during an older and more paranoid age. We watched gravity maps and neutrino flows and magnetic noise. We were not soldiers. We were listeners. And within the first hour, we saw something that made the blockade feel like a footnote. The moon changed. Not visibly. Not at first. But instruments began reporting mass fluctuations on the far side. Small at first. Then growing, tides shifted by fractions that should not exist. Lunar orbit jittered in ways that broke every model we had. Someone joked that the moon was waking up. No one laughed. We redirected what few sensors still functioned toward the dark side. Data came back distorted and incomplete but consistent. Something beneath the lunar crust was moving. Slowly. Purposefully. Not drilling or erupting. Reorienting. I felt a cold certainty settle in my chest. The moon was not just a rock. It was a structure. Not hollow in the way conspiracy theories loved, but engineered, layered, reinforced, built to contain. As panic spread on the surface, the alien fleet adjusted formation. Ships pulled back from lunar orbit and thickened, their presence between Earth and the moon. That was when the meaning shifted. They were not surrounding us. They were standing in the way. A transmission finally broke through. Not a message in any language. Just a burst of mathematical constants followed by a single repeating pattern. A warning, perhaps, or a marker. It was aimed not at Earth, but at the moon. Then the far side lit up. No explosion, no fire. A slow, radiant seam appeared across the lunar surface, like a scar remembering how to open. Gravitational alarms screamed. The moon trembled and the tremor echoed through Earth itself. People felt it in their bones. I understood then why the blockade existed. Why the silence was absolute. Earth was not the target. Earth was the lock. And whatever was rising from the dark side of the moon had been waiting a very long time for someone to make a mistake. The seam on the moon widened with impossible patience. It did not tear or shatter. It unfolded. Segments of lunar crust shifted aside as if responding to a long-forgotten command. What lay beneath was not darkness but structure. Smooth surfaces caught the light of distant stars and bent it into unfamiliar colors. The moon was not breaking. It was opening. Every remaining sensor on Earth went into overload. Gravity wavered in rhythmic pulses. The planet's magnetic field stretched and recoiled like a living thing. Power grids flickered. Tides behaved strangely. People across the world reported the same sensation of pressure behind the eyes, as if something immense had turned its attention inward. The alien fleet reacted instantly. Ships realigned into layered arcs facing the moon. Energy readings spiked, but still no weapons fire. They were preparing for containment, not combat. That realization spread through command channels like a slow poison. Whatever was beneath the moon was not something they believed could be destroyed. Inside the monitoring facility, voices dropped to whispers. Data analysts argued, and then fell silent as models collapsed one after another. The mass beneath the moon was too large to exist without destabilizing the system. It had been compensated for, balanced, anchored by something else. By Earth, I began seeing patterns in the noise. Human brainwaves across the planet were shifting, not uniformly but in harmony. Sleep cycles synchronized, dreams overlapped. Emergency rooms filled with patients describing the same images. A vast chamber, a ring of light, a presence that felt ancient and restrained. Then the signal came again. This time it was clearer. Not sound or language, but alignment. The facility's instruments locked onto it, and for a moment I felt it pass through me. Not pain, recognition, the sensation that something immense was checking a mechanism and finding it still responsive. I understood then that the moon was not a prison alone. It was part of a system, a seal that required a living world to function. Earth was not collateral. Earth was a component. The alien fleet transmitted a narrow beam toward the opening seam. Our sensors struggled to translate it, but the intent was unmistakable supplication. They were asking it to remain dormant. The response was subtle and devastating. The beam bent, not deflected, but curved gently back toward its source. Several alien ships lost cohesion and folded inward without an explosion. They vanished as if erased from the equation. The fleet recoiled in fear at last. The seam stopped widening. Instead, something moved upward. Not emerging, aligning. A vast form pressed against the inner surface of the moon. I could not see it directly, but its outline distorted space itself. It was not trying to escape. It was testing the lock. And Earth answered. Seismic readings spiked everywhere at once. Not destructive, but deliberate, as if the planet had tightened its grip. The pressure behind my eyes intensified and images flooded my mind again. This time clearer. A war older than stars. A being that could not be killed, only paused. A decision made to bind it to a system that would grow stronger with time. A world seated not as bait but as balance. Humanity was not an accident. We were the final safeguard. The realization settled like gravity. If the lock failed, it would not be because the moon broke. It would be because we did. And somewhere beneath the dark side of the moon, something ancient was waiting to see what choice we would make. The pressure reached a steady peak and then stopped rising. That alone was terrifying. Every model we had predicted, collapse or release. Nothing accounted for restraint. The presence beneath the moon was no longer testing the lock. It was waiting. Across the world, the same reports came in. People had stopped panicking. Not because they felt safe, but because something deeper had quieted them. Streets emptied. Wars paused. Arguments died mid-sentence. Billions of minds were drifting toward the same narrow frequency without being forced. It felt like standing at the edge of a thought too large to finish. In the monitoring facility, our screens filled with overlapping data and then began simplifying. Systems that had never spoken to each other synchronized. Old satellites briefly reconnected. Even broken probes whispered fragments of telemetry. Earth was acting as a single instrument. The alien fleet made its final move. They withdrew from the blockade and repositioned far from the moon and Earth alike. Not retreating, yielding, one vessel remained and transmitted a message. Stripped of all ornament, it carried only meaning. The system is complete. The balance holds. We will not interfere again. Then they were gone. The shape beneath the moon pressed no further. The seam began to close, reversing its impossible geometry as if time itself had decided to forgive the motion. Lunar crust slid back into place without a sound. Gravity stabilized. Tides returned to familiar rhythms. Power grids steadied. The sky slowly reclaimed its ordinary stars. But something had changed. The presence did not withdraw. It remained aware. Not hostile, not benevolent, observant. The ancient mechanism had recognized that the final component was active and intact. Humanity had not broken under isolation. We had aligned. In the quiet aftermath, people remembered what they had seen in their minds. Not clearly, not enough to form cult or doctrine, just enough to feel connected to one another in a way that had never existed before. Something vast had brushed against us and decided we were sufficient. Weeks later, scientists confirmed what no one wanted to say aloud. The moon's mass readings had shifted permanently. Not larger, not smaller, stabilized in a way that suggested intentional equilibrium. The lock had been reinforced not by force but by participation. We were no longer passive. Deep beneath the surface of the planet, instruments continued to register a faint echo. A standing wave linking Earth and Moon and something beyond both. It was not a message. It was a reminder. If we fractured ourselves, the balance would weaken. If we burned our world, the seal would strain. If we vanished, the system would fail. The universe had not entrusted us with power. It had entrusted us with responsibility. I often look at the moon now and wonder how many times it has opened before. How many civilizations were given this role and failed? The alien fleet had not come to conquer or to save us. They came to see whether the lock was still alive. It was. Something rose from the dark side of the moon, and in the end, it did not escape. It stayed because we did.